702.
The Big Interview
With Bongani Bingwa.
We're joined now by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi, who gave a budget vote just yesterday. And there's so many questions to ask. 30 years into our democracy, we are still grappling with issues of justice, accountability, and transformation. And many people say, whilst it's great on paper, is the Constitution working as a living document in terms of people's experiences? We've seen courts overloaded, trials delayed, corruption scandals, gender-based violence, and growing public frustration with crime. Many citizens feeling that the system is under pressure from every angle. Minister, as always, a pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Bongani, and good morning to your listeners. Thank you for hosting me.
You've heard my introduction as the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, and we'll get to some of the details of your budget vote in a moment. But with all of this unfolding, with everything we've seen in the various processes that are looking and investigating at alleged criminality in our law enforcement, what keeps you up at night?
Safety in our courts keeps me awake at night when we have so many multiple high intense cases, organized crime. My fear is always to say I want to see all this happening without an incident in any of our courts. So that's the first thing. As you know, we've got high pressure. When you look at our budget, we're starting to spend a lot of money on security, protecting those who are presiding over these cases, making sure that the prosecutors who are dealing with these matters are able to have their trial starting and ending without any interruption. That's literally my major issue currently.
From where you sit, what is the biggest threat to this democracy?
Organized crime, as we see, it is, but also the collapse of systems, Bongani. Taking it from the Zondo Commission, where institutions weakened and therefore were not available to become a defense for our democracy. I think rebuilding of those institutions has not been easy, and continuing to see some of the things that are happening in Madlanga does tell us that we are a democracy. As we opened ourselves to the world, we do find those challenges and the issues, the elements of globalization in our country, and therefore we need to continue to strengthen our institutions so that they can defend the democracy. But have men and women who are of high level of ethics and moral standing so that they can be able to also defend our democracy.
Minister, let's get some specificity. You talk about the collapse of systems. Which do you mean?
Look, Bongani, when you look at some of the issues that we have to deal with in justice system, and especially what we're looking at Madlanga Commission. So the check and balances needs to be there, so that, for example, if there's an investigation, those who are handling dockets must have supervision to see that those dockets are closed properly. There's not been tampering with them. If a prosecutor is handling a case and makes a decision, we must put checks and balances to ensure that those prosecutors are not actually taking bribes to be able to take the thing. One of the issues I'm now having conversation with NDPP, for example, is possibility of rotation. We've seen if people are stationed in one place over time, they can be actually co-opted into organized crime. So the issue of not having, so that we put it as policy, and some of the legislative requirements, amendments that we are proposing on the NPA Act, is to try and put those systems in place, especially on my portfolio around that. Secondly, is to be able to create systems within institutions to protect whistleblowers. You'd remember Judge Zondo, when he did the state capture, one of the highlights was that all these people that actually could have helped save the state found themselves vulnerable, and actually they were persecuted because many of them lost their houses, their cars, and employment. And it's those things. I spoke to one of those victims I would call her victims, because she lost everything. She went back to stay in a back room from being a top executive. And we're trying to see how best we can be able to deal with those. The legislation that we're proposing, Bongani, that I discussed earlier on with you in one of the interviews, it's what we hope it will help us going forward as systems we are putting in place.
Oh, I'm really keen, and I don't mean to hang on this for too long. I'm just collapse of systems. I think that's such a big admission on your part. Can you give me more details? I think you're speaking a little bit broadly. You've mentioned dockets, you've mentioned the protection of whistleblowers, but in terms of the systems, because of course, as you know, you oversee a number of entities. Which systems do you think are facing collapse?
No, the reason I'm saying this, my part of my responsibility, Bongani, is also what we call integrated justice system. So integrated justice system is what you have to put all these things into a digital platform. So police needing all their dockets and their system to be in a digital platform. It starts with the dockets in the police station, and it starts with the perpetrator or a suspect fingerprints being captured in a system, moving from that, going to court in terms of the court being able to process this, prosecutors having access to that online, but also towards correctional services, BMA as well in that system. And because this is one of the issues, and we've taken a decision to escalate. I'm engaging Treasury. This has not been built, Bongani. It's a program that was meant to start in 1996. But you can see, because of the challenges that we had in our country, it was deliberately halted, it was deliberately frustrated, so that it doesn't work. Because once it works, once we are all, because if it's a digital platform, no one can tamper, because everybody would see, and it will have a track that it was Mmamoloko who got in and tampered with this document because it's electronically. Or at this point, this one did not make the right decision. So it does assist, though it can be, for example, if you don't have cyber security properly, it can be compromised. But those are the systems that need to be in place to be able to protect the justice system, and are not in place. And that's why I talk about those problems that we have, because deliberately, if they are manual, they are easily collapsed, Bongani. If they are manual, they're easily interfered, and that's why we've got to build those. And that's the responsibility we have as Department of Justice.
All right, so we were supposed to have done this, you say, as early as 1996. That was 30 years ago. How soon can you commit that under your watch, we will have a digital system that will capture all dockets, and obviously there'll be restricted access to those, but at least it will be electronic?
What we are doing currently, I can only commit once Treasury gives us the resources that we need. We have worked around what we need. We are in engagement. I'm hoping, Bongani, before the end of this year, or by in at least when Minister of Finance does MTDPS, at least he addresses this area. So conversation between ourselves and Treasury is at advanced level with technical teams. I have presented this. I'm also going to convene another meeting with ministers, because I do think that it's just not acceptable where we are sitting.
Minister, there is a sense from many South Africans who again have been watching all these processes that are unfolding. There's a sense that the criminal organizations are ahead of the justice system. I mean, we all knew we had problems, but the extent of the problems and who's involved has been absolutely shocking to see. What was the aha moment you have had as you've been watching all of this?
I think they're not ahead, they are enabled. And one of the things that I've been having conversations with some of the colleagues, we do have, Bongani, to pay attention to issues of compensation of law enforcement agencies. I do believe holistic, we've got to try and find preventative measures rather than reactive. We are happy that the Madlanga Commission is doing the work that is doing, the task team is doing the work that is doing. But in a long-term plan is to say, as I say, from my side in prosecution, I'm looking at already saying how much do we pay who? For example, you find that a magistrate earns less than a prosecutor. You find that a police officer would earn less than an administrator in a department. Those are anomalies that we've got to pay attention to, because they become vulnerable.
Minister, with the greatest respect, I mean, I understand those issues are real, so I'm not dismissing them at all. Is it as simple as that? I mean, today, we've got the court appearance of a suspended National Police Commissioner. There was a story just this past weekend about a hack into Ekurhuleni's financial systems where 2 billion rand was lost. We've been hearing of drugs and narcotics that go missing, and police officers are involved. We are hearing that at the Madlanga Commission about something that happened in 2021, but it also happened again just recently. We've had the head of counter-crime intelligence appearing in court. We've had the top Hawks official appearing in court. And I know you're not responsible for policing, but those are the stories we hear every single day. It does appear that crime, organized crime, is ahead of the justice system. And it's not just about how much police officers get paid.
No. I don't think it's ahead. That's what I'm saying, Bongani. We can differ here. It's enabled. It's enabled.
That's part of being ahead. That's part of being ahead.
Okay, maybe the usage of law. Let me explain what I want to say, Bongani, so that you explain what I'm saying. The vulnerability of individuals within the system, if it's not addressed, will continue to have a problem. I have an incident where somebody was sharing with me, and I'm sorry, I might take a little bit longer. But this individual had a funeral that couldn't get money to pay for it. Eventually got somebody who approached him, because in the organization that is working, it's a case in Free State. Somebody who works with him knew his vulnerability, went and told the organized people it's relating to a heist. Went and told the people that were looking for someone to collaborate with, to say his witness is this one. He's got a funeral of his grandmother. He's not able to bury his grandmother. The banks have rejected because he doesn't afford. And they loaned him 25,000. That's how he ended up in the cartel and enabled a heist to happen, gave them the routes, gave them everything in exchange of that 25,000. But it started with them helping. Then following time, they come and say, demanding, we want it today. And the person couldn't pay. And that's why how he ended, they said, okay, this is how you can help us. Give us the routes of this truck, how it's going to happen, who is there, and all the nitty-gritties. This person had that information. In exchange of a 25,000 rand, he provided that information. Hence, I'm saying we've got to look at the root cause of the problem, because we are going to deal with symptoms and not address. We'll continue to be here if we don't deal with the root cause. And that's what I'm explaining, Bongan.
All right, Minister, I have to let you go. I understand you've got another interview. I don't want your staff to be cross with me, but we do appreciate you coming on the radio. Thank you for your time. Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi. Do you agree with her assessment? Crime, organized crime, is not ahead of the justice system, she argues, but it's just that they are enabled. By whom, I wonder?
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.